Joining us now is Matt Stoller. He is the author of The Big Newsletter, great friend of the show. It's good to see you, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So you just wrote this. Let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. What did Trump just do on the tariffs? It's very relevant, obviously, this morning, now that we no longer have China tariffs, we don't have Canada tariffs, but we do have, Canada tariffs or Mexico, but we do have China.
And I was like, wait, did
yeah, no,
I know, I was wondering that too. Like, I gotta look at Twitter.
No. China is here, at least for now. We've got 10% tariffs on China, but there's some big question marks of exactly what's in it. This is obviously falls within an issue area that you care a lot about. Can you explain a bit to the audience and some of the importance of this?
Yeah, I mean, I wore a jacket with plaid to convey authority because this is going to be like very sort of technical. I'm going to do my best.
Sure.
So the situation is changing really quickly, so we don't 100% know, but we'll know in a few days maybe. So there's this, so he put 10% tariffs on stuff that's coming in from China, right? And that is, there's a lot of industrial machinery and various other things coming in. But what is interesting, I think particularly interesting, and I think what we were just talking about this off camera, there's a loophole that is maybe more important than just the raw amount that he put on, and that loophole is called the de minimis exemption to trade, or de minimis loophole. Under $800, right? When you bring something in, an individual does not have to pay duties or tariffs or have that inspected. So this was set up. If you've ever been abroad and you come back and you bought a sweater or whatever, when you're on the plane and you fill out, like they're like, did you buy anything, right? Was it worth more than a certain amount of money? You don't have to get that inspected. You don't have to know the tariff codes. They don't treat you like a commercial importer, right? That's what de minimis is. It's intended to let kind of tourists bring in a few things here or there. The problem is in the 1990s, or the dynamic is in the 1990s, what they said is this can be used not just for tourists, but for e-commerce, right? And they said, if you are an individual buying through, say, like an Amazon or something like that, and they ship you something from China, that can come in, and it's less than $800, that can come in under this de minimis, under the de minimis rules. No inspections, no duties, no tariffs, and it can come in through what's called informal entry. So it doesn't have to have a licensed customs broker, it doesn't have to be bonded. Now, there are about 1 billion, maybe more than 1 billion packages coming in every year. I think the number is 1.4 billion, but who's counting? From China every year under the de minimis loophole. So this is the basis of the business model of Temu, of Shein, of fast fashion, and of Amazon, right? More than 50% of third-party sellers, which is the majority of their sales, come directly from Chinese sellers. Right? So this is, kind of crazy, right? So if you're a bicycle producer in this country, you have to compete with bikes coming in duty-free, no tariffs, no inspections, so on and so forth. And that is true kind of across the board. Now, what this tariff executive order did is they said that de minimis exemption or that de minimis loophole is gone, sort of, right? So they say you now have to pay tariffs on everything, whether it's, $20 or $20,000, okay? But what they haven't been clear on is whether they're going to force the de minimis stuff that's less than $800 to come in through a more formalized entry, right? Are they going to make them put like Amazon or Temu or Shein? Are they going to have to use a licensed customs broker, bonds? And if they do, like, it doesn't make sense to let you buy a $3 T-shirt and then you have to get a licensed customs broker to handle that individual package. It makes more sense to bring in 20,000 T-shirts or 100,000 T-shirts, bring them into U.S. warehouse, and then do fulfillment from there. And so it's not clear what they're doing with the actual process, but a tariff on a $3 T-shirt doesn't matter.
Right.
10%, who cares, right? Especially because they're tariffing the wholesale price. So they're more likely tariffing, $1, right? Not, or 30 cents, not the $3. So a 10% tariff on 30 cents is 3 cents, who cares? But if they're saying, all right, you have to change your whole, it's just gonna be much more expensive to bring in an individual item. It doesn't matter for a bicycle that's $500. It doesn't really matter for a piece of industrial machinery. It does matter for a T-shirt or, a small, Pez dispenser or
iPhone
something like
cord.
that. Right.
Yeah, right.
So that's not, there are different versions of that floating around, and we don't actually know what they're going to come down and say because they're big logistical challenges if you get rid of the de minimis. The tariff, just charging the tariff is not that big a deal, but the logistical question, formal versus informal entry. So that, I hope I haven't been too technical.
No, but I think this is important because this is originally what I want to talk about, is that these businesses, I mean, we've got the Super Bowl coming up, right? Do you remember how many Temu commercials were in our last Super
Shop
Bowl?
like a billion.
Yeah, these things have become massive companies. And yeah, anyway, that's why I wanted to talk to you about this.
You focus on competition, and there's definitely a competition tie-in here. How does this disadvantage like small and medium-sized retailers over, gives Amazon and Temu and these like big players a huge leg up?
Well, I mean, so it's like if you are making a product here, right, you have to comply with all environmental laws. You can't use slave labor. There's like a bunch of stuff you ostensibly can't do, right? And if you are, we don't have jurisdiction in China or other countries. But so the way we handle that is through the customs procedure, right? So you're not allowed to bring in goods and products where they are using certain techniques like human trafficking or whatever. If they don't do any inspections, right? Or if they don't do, if they are not charging tariffs, even if there's a tariff on the books, but they're not charging it, then you can bring all those goods in without any, there's no, you were just mentioning the nicotine. I didn't actually know about that, but like that was a good example, right? Where you're competing against companies that don't have to adhere to the same standards that you do in this country. And that's just unfair, right? So a lot of like the bicycle manufacturers are one of the coalition groups, or bike stores. They're one of the groups that, actually it's not just manufacturers, it's stores too, right? Because if you're importing a bike from China, right? If you import it directly to an end consumer, it's cheaper than if you bring it to a store and sell it to, because the store is going to bring in, 100 bikes, so they don't get access to the de minimis, duty-free, tariff-free. So it actually just changes the retail environment in the U.S. and makes, harms the little guy in all sorts of different ways. The other part of it that I think is kind of crazy is that you have a billion plus packages coming in, so that's like 4 million packages every day. And there's a ton of fentanyl in these packages, right? They're going uninspected, and it's brought here by our own post office, right? So there's a lot of conversations about, there's all this fentanyl coming in from Mexico, right? That's what a lot of Republicans like to talk about, and Democrats too, but mostly it's a Republican thing. But really what's happening is, I mean, it's not to say that there isn't fentanyl coming in from Mexico, but one of the things they say is, well, we haven't seized any fentanyl coming in from these packages in China. And so we know it's coming, we're seizing a lot from Mexico. It's like, well, that's because no one's looking, right? But when they start to look, and they have started to do some pilot programs, they're finding a ton of fentanyl coming in through, these packages. And so it's a really good idea to actually just start bringing them in through normal customs procedures so that we can apply the same techniques that we use to inspect everything else for this.
It's really important.
How does, we all watched the inauguration. Jeff Bezos was, Trump's new buddy. His wife also was quite notably there. A lot of people had a lot to say about her. How does his influence tie into all of this?
Well, it's interesting because this has implications. So the tariffs have implications for Apple as well, because they didn't put an exemption in for the iPhone, right? Which, I was just listening to CNBC, and they were talking about how this is going to take 3% of Apple's profits, right? Because they are, what do? They absorb the extra tariff? Do they raise prices and annoy Trump? Like, what do they change their supply chains? Someone's got to pay. And this is, I think, a much bigger deal for Amazon than Apple, but it's a big deal for Apple. It's also actually weirdly a big deal for Meta because, the fast fashion Chinese groups were spending billions of dollars on advertising.
Oh,
So this is the one where maybe like Google and Microsoft are not actually like super affected by it, but the other three are. And I think it says that these companies have some levels of influence on Trump, particularly on, when they're negotiating with foreign countries. If he feels that those foreign countries are trying to regulate American companies, he will fight for that. But he's not, it doesn't look like he's doing explicit favors for these companies yet. And I'll say one other piece, and this is not about trade, but yesterday there was an argument having to do with a case against Google, an antitrust case against Google brought by Epic Games, so not a government case, but the antitrust division, because the government can intervene in private cases if they think the state has an interest. The government actually had a lawyer there and argued for, certain, basically Google was in the wrong. And, that is an indication that the antitrust division could have said, you're not doing that anymore, right? Like they've been telling regulators and enforcers all over the government, we're totally changing things. They haven't done that with the antitrust division in big tech.
That's interesting.
So this is a small hint of that. So this is really, it's like, I don't know what to think because I see a lot of, I don't trust Trump. I mean, candid, I'm a Democrat. I'm very skeptical. I see a lot of corporate favoritism. You guys talk about it. But some of these areas, like big tech's not getting exactly what they want.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.